Hey, Brian, thanks for dropping by.
Well, yeah, it was nice of you to invite me. I thought it was yesterday, so forgive me for being late.
Hey, as long as we get it done, I'm glad you came by. And we have a lot to talk about today and not enough time, but I wanted to start because this is part of our Making Reagan series of podcasts with those who were involved with the movie. And so I want to talk to you about that. First of all, I think it was about 2015 that I sent you the script. Do you remember that?
Oh, heck yeah. Because it was a long time. I'm going. I read the script. It was just on a stack of papers, and at the time, and then I didn't hear from you for 5 years. So I'm going. Well, I must not made the cut.
Oh man. I don't know why movies take so long to make, but it took me like 19 years to make that movie. And but it was funny
Uh-huh.
because I would kind of collect people along the way. I worked with Jennifer O'Neill from the summer of 42 in 2011. I said, "Hey, by the way, I want you to play Reagan's mother." And then of course it wasn't 10 years later that it happened, but you're one of
Well,
those people that we
COVID hit.
collected.
COVID took out about 3 years, didn't it? Where you
Yeah,
couldn't do anything.
COVID was tough. We had everything you could imagine. We had COVID, we had the war in Ukraine, we had an actors strike, you name it,
Ah, man.
we had it. So, but it was but anyway, you got the script in 2015 and you came back I think with two songs pretty quickly or two demos pretty quickly.
Yeah, I did. The first song we kind of made up on the fly. I was at Rick Thompson's, the Sweet Comfort Band. He has a studio of his own, and I was over there, and we were just trying to, come up with an idea. But I hadn't really thought about it connected to where it would be in the script. The one you guys picked was called "Do
Do
I
I say
Say
goodbye?
Goodbye?"
Yeah.
And that was the one thing that I mean, Sweet Comfort Band played for the Reagan when he was running for president. We
Right.
played at one of his uh, campaign stops. But the thing that really stood out to me was in the movie and in the script was when he gets to the point in his life where he's pretty much my age now, and he he is finally told that he can't ride his horse anymore. And I'm going, man, that's the scariest thing in the world is when
Yeah.
the things that you've always done your whole life
Yeah.
have to be set aside, and
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons I follow Jesus to this day, because I'm going, we don't get to keep anything over here except the promise of eternal life that Jesus talks about. But you know it's horrifying to realize that we don't get to keep anything, and even when your best talents, the things you love the most, go by the wayside at some point. So I mean,
Well,
it really spoke to me. He had a lot of courage to just say, "Okay, well, this is where we are," and he even made an announcement that he had Alzheimer's, and my dad had Alzheimer's as well, so I had some firsthand experience.
yeah, I think that's why you resonated with that ending. But you were on that soundtrack of songs inspired by the film, which we loved. We had an amazing lineup. You were joined by the Commodores and Tanya Tucker and just some great artists. But
Yeah,
it was your father's connection that really made you want to write that song, wasn't it?
yeah. My dad was a Pentecostal preacher, and so I mean, I kind of grew up in the church, so I mean, it was kind of a surprise to be in a movie where it wasn't all Christian artists. I've been in Christian music for years, and so it was pretty cool to go, wow, Alabama, Gene Simmons. Yeah. So, I mean, it was kind of an honor. It felt like a different level of respect because, sometimes when you're in Christian circles, people discount you in other areas because they figure that you're some kind of a
Right.
salesman, that
Right.
you're just out there pitching Jesus all the time. And I'm going, no, I have the same experiences that most of you do.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that in a second. I want to come back to that. But so you watched your father kind of deteriorate. How long did that go on for?
Probably 7 years. I think that's kind of the standard thing. He was diagnosed and it just progresses for, they said, about 7 years. And he had a stroke about 6 years after his diagnosis, and then, so from there it started to go downhill really fast.
Mm.
And I always thought it was interesting to watch it because he didn't know who his wife was, but he knew where the cookies were in the kitchen. I'm going, how does that work? You know, are they more important? Oreos?
No,
But
man.
he always remembered me too. I was surprised.
Well, they call it the long goodbye, right? It's a disease that slowly
Yeah.
robs you of everything, and in Reagan's case, I think he had it for about what? Yeah, maybe about the same, maybe 10 years. I think
Wow, that's long.
94 to 2004, something like that. But they said that he allegedly opened his eyes one last time and looked up at Nancy as he was dying. So there's some kind of cognizance there. And the time that I had with him, he was. I visited him in his office. He was kind of in a fog the whole time, just most of the time.
Hmm.
But anyway, I think you captured that. You captured that feeling really, really well. And so thanks for jumping in on that one. But yeah, it was great to have you on a soundtrack. You talked about you came of age in the whole Christian music scene. And well, let's see, were you ever, no, you were on Light and Lexicon and different labels, so you never really
Yeah.
had that shot. But, when I was a kid, sometimes people think Christian music was like the B team, people that couldn't quite cut it in the mainstream side. But the older I got, the more I would see that's not really the case because you would have artists, for instance, King's X, actually got rejected by a Christian label and then signed to Atlantic and became huge stars.
Oh
You had
yeah.
MC Hammer, who was tried to get signed to Frontline and became MC Hammer later. So I don't think that was the case at all. I think that talent was just as strong.
Well, some of the first bands that I loved in that were in Christian circles, one was called Psalm 150, and the drummer was named Greg Eckler. And he did two songs during the Jesus movement at Calvary Chapel, and they pretty much booted that band off the stage because Chuck Smith didn't like horn sections. And these guys were funk.
What's
They
wrong with
were
horn
absolute straight
sections?
up. Yeah, there was something. Apparently they were too sensual sounding or something.
Ah,
So was funk music for that matter.
okay.
But the bass player in that band went on to be a Night Ranger, and Greg went on to be on a Capitol Records band called Rubicon.
Mm,
They played at a lot of big festivals, and so yeah, I mean, yeah, it's assumed that you're second class citizens, and it doesn't really feel good to be discounted. But for me, I just gone all the time. I mean, we were playing all the time. It didn't
yeah,
really matter. We were playing for people generally, and we weren't reading any press clippings
yeah.
because there really wasn't one. There wasn't any. So
Well, it was fun to mix it up on these soundtracks with, as you mentioned, with you and Bob Dylan gave us a song, and Gene, of course, gave us a song, and then have you and Phil Keggy. Phil Keggy did "Sweet Child of Mine" for me, so that was a lot of fun.
oh man,
Put you guys with some great contemporaries that should have been that way all along, but here we are. I also think that your song "Contender" should have been on the Rocky 3 soundtrack 40 years ago, but that's just me.
what's really funny is that my bass player from the Neo Soul band did a remake of the Rocky theme,
Uh-huh.
and it's coming around for an anniversary of some sort, and they wanted it for that. You're going to hear his song, his version of the Rocky theme, I think, on the anniversary edition.
Well,
Uh,
our director initially was supposed to be John Avildsen, who directed Rocky. And so I
mhm.
was I was looking forward to the commercials for the movie saying from the director of Rocky comes Reagan. But he passed away at 81 years of age, and
Oh man,
I don't think he could have survived COVID. Shooting a movie in the middle of COVID at 81 years old just probably wouldn't have
yeah,
worked. But we learned so much from him. He was such an amazing teacher for me, just as a producer. And one thing he taught me that I never forgotten was he said, don't forget, Mark, that Rocky was never about boxing. It just happened to be his occupation. And in the same way, this movie about Reagan, he said it can't be about politics. It just happens to be his occupation, but it's really about the man and all that he has to
yeah,
overcome and the obstacles he faces.
yeah. I certainly read that in the script. I mean, that was the thing that I related to the most was how you deal with adversity and how you deal with bad news. I mean, He got shot too, for that matter, but I couldn't relate to that. I haven't been shot, but
Well,
the adversity thing is pretty commonplace for most of us.
well, you weren't shot, but I'm pretty sure you had a pretty scary plane crash that it was almost as close as getting shot. Tell me about that story.
You know, I never even told my kids that till about 5 years ago. You know, just didn't want to talk about it because, you know, we were kind of stupid. You know, I mean, it was like every rock story you ever heard. You know, the rock and roll band is in a hurry to get somewhere, and they jump on a plane with somebody they don't know, and the next thing you know, you're going, "Wow, we're not landing on an airstrip." It was like that was kind of the way it was, and we were lucky because we landed in a marsh. I mean, we tried to land on a road, but we crashed in a marsh about 200 yards off, and it's the only time I ever kissed the drummer. And we got we got out of that plane. I'm going, I still have all my parts, so it was that.
What in the world? Well, I was trying to think of we go back a long, long ways. By the way, I think I have to credit you with dissuading me from having a career as a writer, solely as a writer, or sorry, I should say, and thinking of a career where you had to rely on your income from writing. Because I did an article on you guys in 1989. I spent the night at your house, interviewed you. I turned in this thing, and I get paid after a month's work $150.
Yeah.
And I thought it was for CCM. I said, there is no possible way to make a living like this.
Nope.
Got to find a first source of income.
Well, you know, and I wrote a couple of books because, you know, you always think about you'll write something and it'll take off. But, you know, my publisher told me once, he says, you know, the average writer has written 21 books before he's really successful. And I got to say, you know, I still only get $150 for the royalties on Pandora. It's like, hey, thanks for the help.
Yeah.
So it is in the volume of the book. Just about anything you do. I've got 22 albums out there now, and eventually the accumulation will let people know that this was what you did for a living, if nothing else.
Well, so for those who didn't follow your career, you began in a band called Sweet Comfort, later Sweet Comfort Band. By the way, I found out later that album cover of your first record was designed by Greg Laurie, who did his version of the Beatles' Let It Be record.
Yeah, I think he was probably a Beatles fan. I didn't like it because I'm going, well, that's not very creative, but you know, what do you do with four guys? And back then there wasn't a lot of marketing aspects to anything Christian music. Greg was a cartoonist besides being a preacher. You want to talk about somebody that had two jobs? You know, Greg was doing cartoon tracts and such the like, and doing Bible studies. We're all wearing more than one hat. That's all.
Yeah.
We worked at his church. You know, in the early days, I was an usher and a correspondence counselor at Calvary Chapel of Riverside. And, you know, we rehearsed in the church and played every high school and college within 100 miles of the place.
Yeah. Now, those first couple of records, it seems to me, if I recall correctly, each song, you guys were kind of moving in like 5 different musical directions. Like you'd have like a heavy metal song and a country song, and like there wasn't like a really cohesive sound early on, was there?
No. Well, that's because there was 4 people in the band, and they were all remarkably different temperaments.
Right.
I was kind of a sanguine temperament, and so I'm like, you know, jumping around on the stage and being goofball. And Kevin was the guy that liked all the metal stuff. He wanted to be that way. And his brother on drums, Rick, liked all the vocal groups like Orleans and Crosby, Stills, Nash. So we had that stuff going. And the guitar player, Randy Thomas, he was a pragmatic, you know, choleric temperament. You know, he'd sit there and observe everything, and he knew a lot of chords. So, you know, he would take some things that were originally rock and roll and kind of make them jazzy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, you know, back then there was no genre in Christian music. I mean, it was just whatever you guys were playing was what you were playing. And
I would say by your 3rd or 4th record, you're starting to get into a groove where it didn't sound so all over the map musically, wouldn't you say?
Well, the record that really turned us around was "Hold On Tight."
Mm-hmm.
Just an awful record. I mean, we spent the most money on it, and it had everything from "Find Your Way" was like arena rock, and I was
Right.
doing "Undecided," which sounded like Peaches and Herb. It was like we had no idea for the continuity of a record at the
Mm.
time. But ironically, I wrote a song on that record with Tom Stipe, the producer,
Mm-hmm.
called "Carry Me Over." And Fogelberg was at the studio that day, and he was hanging around. And about 3 or 4 years later, he writes a song called "The Power of Gold," and it's literally the exact melody and presentation that we did there. So I know it would have been a hit song if we
Wow.
had that kind of connections.
So
So
Dan,
after that though, we went when Hearts of Fire came out. We decided we need to be in charge of our graphic arts and
hmm
plan on the record sounding keep it in some kind of corral so
right.
that it fits a genre.
Yeah, and I think for people like me growing up in that era, we didn't separate our music by genres. It was like Journey, and there was
Yeah,
Hall and Oates, and there was Sweet Comfort
yeah.
Band, and it wasn't like we didn't segregate our listening. It was the wider world that was doing that, and the CCM industry that was doing that.
Well, I kind of miss that, frankly, because I liked all of it. I liked Sly and the Family Stone,
Hmm
but I liked Crosby, Stills, Nash, and I loved heavier bands. I mean, Journey, I think I picked their first two hit songs before they even came out. I'm going, that's a hit right there. And
Right.
and that'll be on the radio. You watch.
Yeah.
Um, it was long into their career though. But I
Yeah.
was starting to get a handle on what really radio wanted to hear.
Yeah. Well, and did you guys ever have any opportunities for crossing over into the wider mainstream arena with any of the labels you were with?
Well, not so. I mean, the labels weren't really, Light Records and Maranatha were, they were homegrown. They weren't really national,
Yeah.
and those were the only two that we were with. But we played some gigs with Three Dog Night later in their years, and the Doobie Brothers.
hmm
But they were just one-off gigs somewhere. We turned down a gig once because we couldn't get there, and it was for what's the I can't think of their name now. The Rolling Stones. That's who they are. They were playing here in Southern California, and we had a chance to be an opener, and we couldn't get there. We
Wait,
were
wait, wait.
gone. We were out the
You
road.
were asked to open for the Stones, but you couldn't get there?
Yeah, and back then, I mean, they were just. It wasn't like they were the monster band that eventually people go, oh wow, the Stones. It was like even the Beatles. I didn't when the Beatles became considered the best thing in 100 years. They were just the Beatles to me. I wasn't thinking that was. And trust me, if you've opened for somebody, there's no respect there. It's like, yeah, open for somebody that's bigger than you are, and you might as well be a monkey with clanging cymbals. Kink, 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 kink.
Well, you opened for Ronald Reagan. That's pretty good.
Yeah, but he wasn't there till after we were almost finished. And so I never met him. He dropped in on a helicopter. It was in Riverside. And I always liked him because he was such a natural sounding guy. I don't know how nice he was in real life, but he'd always start his conversations with, well,
Well,
and I was like, it just sounded like he was talking to you over the back fence. And maybe that was a crafted thing, but I loved his humor. He always had some joke that was just you leaned in because he was telling some kind of story that you could relate to.
hmm
I remember my favorite one was when he was talking about a pastor and a politician go to heaven, and the pastor gets up there and he says, well, here's your room. You don't really have a mansion. He says, it's just one room and one bed. Long story short, he tells that whole story. And then this politician comes up there and he gets a big spread, on a huge piece of property and a mansion with 36 bedrooms. And the pastor's a little miffed. He's going, how come? I mean, I've been serving the Lord for my entire life, and this guy's been a politician for his whole life. He says, why did he get such great treatment? And the angel says to him, he says, we've never had a politician up here before.
I think we
I'm
had
going,
that.
so we're pretty excited.
I think we put that joke in the movie actually. I
Did
think
you
he
really?
says I think he
I don't
says it
remember what was in there.
I think he says it by the pool as he's talking with Pat Boone and George Otis.
Uh, well,
Right.
I bet you he told that joke more than a few times, because I remember hearing it in a speech that he was doing.
Yeah.
Or he was in a room in front of a microphone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I
But
think
it's
your band
great.
really hit it. Your band really hit its stride. I wanted the soundtrack to be kind of the great artists of that era to today. And you guys really hit your stride in 84, 85, I would say. Felt like 83, 84, 85. And so it was great to
Yeah,
have you.
probably. That's about when we broke up too. He was like,
Yeah, right.
you finally reach the pinnacle, and now it's the pinnacle of your decline.
Yeah, what were some of your favorite moments in the band? Some of your which songs did you feel really captured who you guys were as a band?
I think Hearts of Fire was the best
Hmm.
thing we ever did.
Hmm.
Um, and I can't, these days I'm 73 now, and I can't remember what's on that record. But I remember there's one song called "You Can Make It" that's a
Hmm.
6/8 groove,
Yeah.
and I was leaning into Toto a lot,
Hmm. Yeah.
and that, and those 8 notes were really popular at the time. They were doing "Hold the Line," "Love Isn't Always on Time," and then there was Jefferson Starship had "Jane, you know it's all over," and they were both about it, and I'm going, hey, that's something I could play, because it's just 8 notes.
By the way, while we're talking about Toto, it took me like 45 years to figure out. Did you know what the song Africa's about?
You know what? We were just listening to that yesterday, and I always loved it. It's just it. I know that we were in the studio someplace close by. I didn't get to go, but Rick and Randy went over to the studio where they were working, and I my understanding was that they had 3 guys. The keyboard guys were there, and they spent like 3 days putting that solo section together with
Hmm.
computers. It was completely, computer generated. They build all the stuff out, and then they would map it out, and then just hit the button, and the thing would just run. And it was like, wow, it'd be nice to do that, but I'd hate to try to pull that off live. But yeah, it was stellar. It's just the most
But
stellar
it's
thing. And
the guy who wrote it, I forget what his name was, but he wrote it because when he was in school, the nuns used to talk about missionaries in Africa. And so he wrote
no
the
kidding.
song, he wrote the song about missionaries in Africa.
No kidding. I didn't know that.
I
I
had no
I
idea.
thought that they'd. I figured the Picaro brothers had been over there or something. Their dad was pretty famous, and he might have been over in Africa at some point. Maybe he took them hunting over there. I
I
never
remember
really.
I blessed the rains down in Africa. I guess the missionaries used to say we bless the rains in Africa. So you could have did a cover of that song and taken it to the top of the Christian charts in '84 if you'd known that.
Da, 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 da. Yeah, but I don't play the keyboards like those guys did.
That's
David
true.
Page, those guys they were in a whole different league. I covered one of Toto songs for somebody's record, and I can't think of what it is now. Some people live their life. It was a Steve Lukather song, and I sang it, but I didn't really look at the lyrics because I knew the song pretty
Is it as
well.
soon
But
as my heart stops, I'll be over you.
yeah, "I'll Be Over You," and I was
Yeah.
doing that, and then I sang, but I sang the wrong lyrics. I sang, "Some people live their lives. Some people read," and I got a chance to play it for him, and he said, "Those aren't the lyrics," and I don't think he spoke to me ever again. Like, he says that some people live their dreams,
Right.
but I was always
Some people
probably a
close
Christian thing.
some people close their eyes, I think.
Yeah, but I was singing "Live Their Lives," so
Mm.
obviously I didn't give him enough respect
Yeah.
in covering the song.
Well, then you, after that era, which made some great, and I would say you guys would compare favorably to Journey, maybe a little REO Speedwagon, just that great. Who else? Anyway, then maybe Toto. You're a little heavier than Toto. Then you went solo, and you really had a second career as a solo artist, which is pretty rare. What was that
Yeah.
like to make the big jump and come out with your first record?
Well, I didn't quit the band to get just to go solo. A lot of people think that, it's some kind of arrogance. The lead singer always goes on his own. But no, I was just tired of not paying taxes and living in a van. And it was like, I want to stay home for a while. And I got a job with a concrete contractor. But about 6 months in, Randy Stonehill, another artist, his manager knew me, and he said, I could get you a contract right now at Light Records.
Mm-hmm.
And, because I was, he just goes to them and says, would you be willing to sign an artist that's already selling 70,000 records under another name? And literally 6 months later, I'm in the studio writing songs again, and I didn't see it coming. I really didn't.
And that record was called Have Yourself Committed.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I hadn't been out of the band for more than not even a year, and I was already feeling like I needed to I literally felt like I needed to get counseling. I mean, it's like I need to be put away or something, because I was just tired, burned out about everything. And so it was kind of a joke, but it was kind of not. I'm going, have yourself committed. It sounds like the perfect thing. And I think we sold more T-shirts on that record than we did records, because the shirt was perfect for youth events and, anybody that felt like they were on the fringe.
Mm. Yeah. So how was it? How was it going out on your own after 10 years with the band? Did you have like a sense of freedom and going out on the road and having a good time,
No.
or was it you missed the camaraderie?
Well, no, I didn't miss the camaraderie. I lived in a van with those guys for like 12 years.
Mm.
After that, you got a familiarity that doesn't really appreciate anything. But no, I was panicked, because now I'm out there by myself. I don't have a fancy guitar player or a flashy band, that's tearing it up. It was just me and a piano, and I'd seen Howard Jones out there singing with a drum machine and a bass programmed, and he would play the keyboards. And I'm going, well, maybe I could do that. And so that's the way I started. And I tried to overdress. I tried to dress really stupid. Like, well, if I wear flashy clothes, I would, be okay. But it was all insecurity for the most part. As long as you were screaming, I was fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I think you're being a little modest. There were some good songs on those records. Holy Rolling was another one after that. How many solo records in total?
Oh man, I lost count. I think 22.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I started in 85 or something, and here I still am. And even Sweet Comfort Band has done a couple of records, and me and the drummer have been writing songs even in recent months. And we're recovering some of the stuff, because we've got a company that's doing a what do they call those? A documentary.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing a documentary on the Sweet Comfort Band. And we didn't have any material. There was not a lot of filmed music back on our tours. So we did a couple of live things last year. So, we're still playing, and nowadays it's hard to tell what the music business is supposed to look like.
Yeah. What kind of a toll did being on the road take on your family life and, your marriage and all that stuff? What?
Well, I had 2 kids by my first wife, and then when I went solo, I was gone all the time. It was even worse. Even though I flew out most of the time, I still was gone for, weeks at a time. I remember opening for some of the bigger Christian acts like Russ Taff or Phil Kagi. We toured, and they were like 6-week tours, and I'd be gone for a long time. And that eventually ruined that marriage. And I'm not married to her now, so but he says we want. She just said we want different things. That's what
Mm.
she said to me, and so yeah, that didn't go well. I probably could have balanced my life a little better than I did.
But I wonder, rather than assigning blame, like, is it even human? Is it even possible to have a marriage and have the lifestyle where you're out on the road constantly? It doesn't seem like
No,
it's a
probably
human.
not. I mean, there's a certain narcissism. Let's face it. You've to be you've got to have some elbows and some arrogance. To step out on stage and believe you're the thing and deliver and all the time, and then you spend all your time with strangers. You're signing autographs and you're doing. You're trying to befriend people you don't know and you don't remember their name. Even in the early days, and I didn't remember who promoted the concert. Sometimes I didn't know what town we were in. I'm going just a blur. The concert tours were just unending, and I don't think I tell people now that I think that kind of road life stunted my growth, frankly.
Mhm. Yeah, I just I wonder, and I've talked about this in other interviews too, but it just seems like that model was developed for young, single,
Yeah,
men to roam the country and be with lots of different people, but not a home life or children.
no,
Um,
no, there was not any of
Whereas
that.
maybe a residency, like let's say you set up your residency in Vegas and people come to you, that would be more conducive to a family. That's my two
Yeah,
cents.
but I mean, I don't know if we could have got anybody to come to Vegas.
Right. Well,
In the
there,
Christian world,
there is
you
that.
know,
Yeah, there is that.
uh,
But
I don't
yeah.
know. I don't know what else there would be. I don't know if I'd want to play in the same place all the time.
Mm, mm,
Because I've tried to do. When COVID hit, I started playing at a local church. Doing their worship set with them. But I was almost suicidal after 3 years playing other people's music. I'm
mm.
going, this isn't what I was called to do. I don't have any real passion about these songs. They seemed really generic, to me. They weren't uh, things where I'm like, like in the song, came to the end of what to say.
Hmm.
Can't live to fight for yesterday. That's the opening lyric for
Yeah.
the Reagan movie. And I mean, I took nothing to write that because I'd been there. This was me looking back at what the hell happened,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And do I say goodbye? Where do we go from here? We did a
Hmm.
lot of those kind of songs,
Hmm.
and I always felt like I could write those all day long. It didn't take me anything to write the lyrics to the Reagan song, or even the other one that you guys didn't use, called "My One Desire Is That You Might Inspire Me to Rise Above My Suffering." I
Mm.
can't remember writing more powerful song lyrics from my own convictions than those two
Mm.
songs.
By the way, it came time to produce the song, and we did it long distance, of course. But there was James Raymond, and I had just worked with his dad, David Crosby, like 5 or 6 years earlier on a film
Yeah.
called Little Pink House.
Hmm.
So that was such a nice surprise.
Well, James Raymond was playing with I don't remember. I think Rick Thompson, the drummer from the Sweet Comfort Band, might have introduced me to him. But
Hmm.
he played with my solo bands. That's when I first started meeting. He was playing music for everybody back then,
Wow.
and a killer keyboard player. But that was before he knew who his dad was.
Right.
So like that came along several years after that, and I'm going, wow, I'll probably never see him again. But
So
I'll be
he
doggone if we didn't write stuff with him. I mean, I think both of the songs we wrote with for the Reagan movie included him.
yeah, he got the musical gene and didn't even know about his dad until he was like 30s or 40s, right?
Yeah, you want to talk about 6 degrees of separation? I mean, his life changed overnight.
Yeah.
Just because now he's got an endorsement like nobody's business. I've written some really good songs with him where I mean he would literally send me a piece of music and literally have the individual melody notes that he wanted for the song. And I remember writing a song with him once where I it was like cutting tile. It was like,
Mm.
like doing a mosaic or something. I literally put lyrics that fit the exact melody that he had played out on the piano. And
Wow.
um, I can't remember the name of that song, but I mean, it was really good, and it never really went anywhere.
Yeah.
I think Bonnie Raitt looked at it once, but I think it was too genuine. It was about, it was about a long lasting marriage. I'm going, I should know better to write something like that because, nobody knows what that's like.
And by the way, you mentioned your kids. I saw your son on like a reality show one time. Remember that? He was like working at a bowling alley or something, and
Yeah, he was living in Hollywood, because he wanted to be an actor. He worked for Disneyland for a long time,
Mhm.
doing voice stuff and characters. I think he was Eeyore, and he played one of Jack Sparrow's sidekicks
Yeah.
with the English accent. And he loved that kind of stuff, but he was down in Hollywood doing that, and he ran across what was the name of that show? Undercover Boss.
Undercover
That's what the
boss.
thing
Yeah.
was called. And he was working at a bowling alley down there, and they loved him. So I mean,
Mm.
and
That's
who
wild.
knew that I would, he won a trip to Belize with his dad, and I'm going,
Mm.
I didn't even know he was doing anything, and going, no kidding, we're going to Belize.
That's so
You
cool.
know, I spent a lot of my own money at that thing. Though it wasn't exactly like winning a prize. I'm going, no, that cost me about $1,200 extra.
Well, we've jumped around a lot, but let me go all the way back to your upbringing. You grew up, your dad was a preacher. You grew up in North Carolina, right?
Yeah, for the most part. I was born in Utah. My dad was an evangelist of sorts, and he moved around a lot. We changed states and towns about every year and a half, So North Carolina was the first time we actually settled down, but we still moved like 3 or 4 times. Charlotte, Kinston, High Point, Greensboro, you know. I'm starting to wonder if, anybody really liked him as a preacher.
It was
I
that
was
the
like,
reason?
no, I don't think so. I think he was, there's some gypsy blood in there somewhere. Because, I
Yeah.
mean, he couldn't seem to sit still until he got Alzheimer's. And that's just the way he was. And he was a smart aleck, too. So, you know. But that man kind of fits into the Pentecostal world,
Yeah.
he had a sense of humor and he was pretty gregarious.
Yeah. What was the Pentecostal upbringing? What did that mean to you? What was it like? I mean, you kind of hear like Russ Taff has a take. I think his father was Pentecostal, but it
Yeah.
was something like a rough childhood. But how was yours different maybe than his was?
Well, I think his dad was a drinker.
Yeah.
That changes your dynamic quite a bit.
Hmm.
My dad was faithful, from what I could tell, for the most part. I mean, he had his downfalls, but and I think that got him in trouble too from some churches.
Hmm.
Um, but he he was really he was passionate about his faith, and he's the reason I'm a Christian
Hmm.
because I saw everything about him. I saw his faith, the things that he believed that you couldn't prove, but I saw him every day and what he dealt with and how he handled hardship and adversity, like the Reagan movie, where if you've got a sense of faith that there's something bigger than this moment,
Hmm.
that'll take you the whole way of your life
Right.
if you can stay with that. So yeah, I mean, I look back now and I think I probably follow Jesus without reservation now because of watching him
Hmm.
his whole life.
So you came out to California because you wanted to be in music. You were coming out for college, but then you got kicked out of college pretty quickly, right?
Now you're gonna bring up all the crap.
Come
Like,
on.
well, you know what? I went to college in Florida because you got a discount for being a preacher's kid, right? So I mean, it
Right.
wasn't very expensive. And I went to a Bible college down there. It's now called Southeastern University, I think.
Okay.
It was this Southeastern Bible College at the time, and basically turned out that I wasn't really. They said I wasn't really missionary material. It's like, but you know, you get back there, your first year of college, and you're out of your usual element where somebody's watching you from the back over the back shoulder, you know.
Yeah.
And boy, I discovered chasing women, and of course I was doing music. I started doing music out there, and we played in parks mostly. It was the hippie days,
Yeah.
and I started a group there. It was back in the days when 1910 Fruit Gum Company. I don't know if you remember those kind of bands, but
No.
they had these big long names,
Mm.
and so we were the Golden Purple Dawn. It was like that was the name of the
Okay.
band, and uh, but you know, eventually they just said, you know, oh, I didn't even finish a whole year. They just said, well, you know, you're really not missionary material. Like,
Well, if it
but
makes you
still,
feel
I still am.
if it makes
Just
you feel
saying.
any better, I don't think the Apostle Paul would have passed the mission board exam test.
Yeah, you
So,
know, you have to have no sense of dignity. You know, at some point, you know, you're not going to get you know, a standing ovation everywhere you go.
you know,
Yeah,
my dad, as you know, was a missionary, but when he went to Japan in 1951, like they just needed warm bodies. You know, it wasn't like they were gonna.
yeah.
I don't think he would have passed the a test today of a mission board because he was a little too rebellious and you know he wanted to do his own
Uh-huh.
thing and you know.
Well, yeah, that sounds typical. That
Right.
sounds.
You needed those kind of swashbuckle missionaries in the early years after World War II that would go and blaze a trail, and they're not going to follow the guidelines of the mission board or this or that or the other thing. But
Well, yeah, you're gonna take a. You're gonna need to be somebody that can take a couple of stonings. I
yeah,
think.
yeah, and a lot of people couldn't handle it. They would come back to the States after a year because it was too tough. So you needed that kind of weird independent spirit. So I'm saying all that to say you're probably in good company. Okay, so you
Yeah.
come to college in California, and that was pretty short-lived too.
Well, I just ran out of money. You know, California's as far away from home as I could get after that. You know, I went home and, you know, I was kind of a failure. It was like, well, you know, I spent the summer there and then I thought, well, I had a cousin out here in California, so she said, you should come out here, man. It was like at the height of the Jesus movement. It was just getting started and Love Song was huge. And I heard them and I thought, well, I'm going to go out there. You know, they got long hair and they seem to be getting away with stuff that I couldn't out here. Um, so you know, I bought a car and I drove all the way across the country and pretended to go to college. Basically, you know, I don't think I learned anything at SCC, but at least it was a start. It got me over here.
And it got you in the scene where you met your bandmates.
Yeah, well, you know what? I went to see Love Song because I mean they were like the Beatles to me. You know, Christian music was still pretty rare, but these guys were doing these stellar background vocals. They sound like a cross between the Beach Boys and the Eagles. And I thought, I gotta go see these guys, man. They had a song called "Lend an Ear to a Love Song." Ooh, a love song. And I'm going, oh man, that sounds nice. So I went over there from the college, and there was a Bible study on Monday night, and there was 1,500 kids coming to that thing, and on a Monday night. I'm going,
Mm.
wow, who goes to a Bible study on Monday night? And listening to a 50-year-old man too. I mean, the pastor was sitting on a stool and he's reading straight out of the Bible like nothing. And these people were just completely enraptured. And then Love Song comes out and they play these songs, and it was like I was in. From that in, I started going every Monday night, and I think it was only about a couple months before I was playing a piano on the side of the stage, and people would refer to me as that Elton John guy.
Mm.
You know, because I had a song that sounded like "How's Your," you know, Tiny Dancer, I think.
Hmm.
So they called me Elton John guy. But the Kevin came up to me at the back tent flap, maybe 2 months in after I'd opened for a couple of bands, and I was playing a piano on the side of the stage. And he says, man, I play bass. And he was an electric bass. You know, everybody played an acoustic guitar back then. It was all a bunch of hippies. So I just thought, well, hey, you know, it's got to sound better than me playing 3 chords on the piano. And then he says, I got a brother who plays drums. So I'm figuring it's going to be another pudgy guy with curly hair. But no, his brother is like 6'2", and he looks like like the guy in Three Dog Night. I can't think of it. Corey. Remember Corey? Three Dog Night? He had a mustache and long black straight hair and skinny as a stick. And so that was it. I met with him the next week, and we started making stuff up, which is what we say now. We weren't really songwriters. We made stuff up.
What was the first song you guys wrote together?
Wow, I don't remember. I really don't remember. One was called "How's Your Faith," and the other songs were kind of forgettable. I mean, we wrote a song called "Sweet Salvation," and we're just trying to get our bearing. I think they're mostly playing songs that I'd already written, and I don't remember half of them now because we didn't record those.
Yeah. Well,
it'd be 6 years before we recorded anything. So trust me, it's not like an overnight success.
Yeah. By the way, what was it about Chuck Smith that made 1,500 young people come out? What was it about his?
It was nothing. Absolutely nothing. Let me just tell you. We think that we bring some kind of talent and we make God. We're God's marketing directors or something. And I'm going. The very fact that this 50-year-old, paunchy older man, balding. Is talking to all these teenagers and 20-somethings
right
about Jesus. That's something of a miracle. I mean, it's I would just say that that's just flat out the hand of God, and what I would call a God wink.
Yeah.
Because God wants to he likes to point out that he doesn't need your help.
Right.
So and right when you wanted to have your name emboldened on the credits, God says, no, that really had nothing to do with you. So,
because he was just a normal person, he talked at a slow cadence, nothing dynamic about him, but there was something.
Well, not only that, it wasn't even an expository treatise. It was. You just read the Bible and say, here's what it says. For God so loved the world
right.
that he gave his only begotten son, and that just means that he's the only son he had, that whoever believed in him would not perish. And that was his sermon. I mean, that was his Bible study. He was just reading the scriptures one line at a time. And I grew up in church, and so I was thinking, well, this isn't very dramatic.
But the fact that he welcomed people like you with long hair and hippies, that was the attraction probably.
Well, and I got to say, I was I looked like I was from the East Coast. My hair wasn't terribly long compared to the hippies of California.
Yeah.
At the time, I remember going to Kmart and buying a T-shirt so that I could fit in at the Bible study, because I was still wearing button-down shirts and slacks from it's from my Bible college days, man. So I kind of figured, well, I'm kind of supposed to look like somebody. So, I bought a pair of Levi's and a T-shirt just for Monday nights.
Now, at the height of your fame with the band or your solo career, what did your parents think about what you were doing?
There's another tragedy.
I'm going for all the soft spots tonight.
Well, they didn't exactly speak to me a lot. My dad told me once, he says, man, he seemed a little disillusioned because he couldn't understand the kind of music I was playing. I was writing this stuff and I'm doing something and I'm not playing in church. I'm playing in prisons and high schools and, in a tent.
Right.
So he's not sure what to make of it. And he says, I knew you had a heart for Jesus and everything, but he says, I also knew you could raise hell. And he says, but, and then at the exasperated, he looks out, he says, but I just never thought you'd split it down the middle. So, that was his initial thing. And my mom said once, she said, when you got better known nationally. People would say, "Oh, you're Bryan Duncan's parents," and then she said to me, "She said I never knew whether to say I was or not,
Right,
because
right,
some people thought you were demonic for doing
right,
that rock and roll stuff, and some people thought you were great, but she was afraid to admit that I was hers because it might be a mistake."
right. So they were not supportive. They were just sort of didn't know what to make of it.
Yeah, just kind of reserving judgment, so to speak. And of course, I couldn't afford to come home, so I didn't come home for like 6 years. I was
Hmm.
out on the West Coast, and I'd
Yeah.
gotten myself out there, and I couldn't get back to even say hi.
Do they ever come to your shows?
Oh yeah, eventually, Sweet Comfort Band would eventually leave California and play other places. We eventually took a van clear across the United States, and
Hmm.
we would eventually play in North Carolina, and they would come to a few of those kind of concerts that were local.
Yeah.
So in the long run, I think they were relieved that I wasn't a complete reprobate.
You weren't in prison or,
Yeah, I wasn't in prison, I wasn't drinking, and I wasn't on drugs. So I mean, there's three things that I missed.
yeah. I mean, you performed in 4 or 5 different decades. What do you see just in the world around you? You've seen so much change happen so quickly. What are your just general observations about the music business and about the touring business and just being an artist and the ebb and flow? I mean, Napster hit. It's become very hard to make a living at it. Any thoughts on any of that?
Well, I don't recognize any kind of a music industry at this point unless you have millions of dollars. I mean, if you're Taylor Swift and your dad's got crap loads of money,
Yeah.
you can throw it out there and make yourself happen. But without a budget for even a record label and then no distribution and none of that, I don't know what it is nowadays. I write songs because it's cathartic for me.
Right.
And, even on the Reagan stuff, it felt so good to just say what I wanted to say and not feel like I had to edit it for a particular audience.
Yeah.
I just said what I wanted to say, and it was incredibly fulfilling, you know. So, and it still is. It's still that way. We wrote a song, me and the drummer from the Sweet Comfort Band, called "If I Knew It Would Be the Last Time I Saw
Mm.
You."
Wow.
Um, and because he almost died, he had AFib. He still does. And he was at a hospital, and he wasn't sure if he was going to leave the hospital. And
Mm.
he said we should write a song about what if this is the last day.
Mm.
And so we did, and it took me nothing to write that song. And then Randy Thomas, the guitar player from the Sweet Comfort Band, lives in Florida.
Hmm.
He did some guitar stuff on it, and then he says to me, he says, there's a lot of people in CCM that have died already. He
Mm.
says you ought to put all their names up on this thing and make it a memorial.
Mm.
And we were kind of laughing about it at the time, but then we decided, that would be worth doing just
Mm.
to, give a tip of the hat to all the people that came before us or that were contemporaries with us. I mean, Andre Crouch and B.J. Thomas and
Yeah.
Sandra Crouch and Carmen, and we assembled a whole group of people that we knew that we had worked with before, and there was like 40. There was like 40 artists that have already passed away that were from the Jesus movement days.
Mm.
That song is on YouTube. You can find it. If I Knew, Sweet Comfort Band.
Mm. Yeah, I was able to get BJ. We recorded his track for the Reagan movie. He passed away, of course.
Yeah.
But it's called "Walls Will Fall, But Love Remains," and it's over the end title credits. And I'm so glad we got that done because he died pretty quickly.
Interestingly, is that one of the first artists I ever covered when I was in high school was B.J. Thomas.
Mm.
I used to sing that in my bedroom.
Raindrops, raindrops.
No, well, I do that one, but no, it was like, "Hello, darling, it's good to hear you. I'm at
Mm.
the railroad station." You can look that up. It's like, so Sweet Comfort Band was in Toronto once, and we we wound up doing a concert with him in Toronto, Ontario, and he was real impressed with my ability to scream. And
Yeah.
and he kind of stayed on the melody. He was smarter about that than I was. And but I
Well,
remember he came out after we played, and he just tore it up vocally. And then he looked over to me like, "See, I can do that too. It's nothing."
well, you really have not lost your voice, which is really unusual. You know, on the song we did together, you have that high note toward the end of the song. I don't even know if you ever hit that note, hit those kind of notes when you were in your band.
No,
So,
I think I was up there before, but I was worried about it. I hadn't when we did that recording, live.
yeah,
Um, I wasn't sure if I could hit it,
you
because
hit it.
well, you know
You
what,
hit it.
you're out of shape. You haven't been singing as much, as you used to, and so we get in the studio, and I'm going, okay, well, I waited for the next day after I'd done
Mm-hmm.
the whole song,
Mm-hmm.
except for that one note,
Yeah.
and I said, and I told the producer, I says, okay, just give me 5 minutes. If I don't hit it, I'm not gonna hit it. It's
Yeah.
like I'm gonna go up there and I'm gonna lose my testicles. As soon as I, and it worked out. I got it on the second shot.
Well, if you're listening
It's
to,
kind of like one of those.
yeah, for those
Go
who
ahead.
watch or listen, for those watching or listening, check out on YouTube or wherever you get your music. Do I Say Goodbye? Sweet Comfort Band, the Reagan soundtrack, and you'll hear what I'm talking about. Just toward the end of the song, Brian nails
It's right.
this.
It's right in the middle of the guitar solo. That's how you
Right,
know.
right. It's remarkable, and that's pretty hard. That's not easy to hit. I'm not saying you're an old man or anything, but you are past
I'll say
70.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was remarkable, and even toward the end of his life, Andre really couldn't hit a lot of his notes, and it's funny because we would argue in the studio, and I would say, he'd say, "Oh, my voice sounds so terrible," and I'd say, "Andre, you're Andre Crouch, you
Yeah.
on a bad day, you're still you. Like, what are you talking about here?"
Yeah.
But he
Well,
wanted to,
I was just on tour with Russ Taff, and he's got some health issues too, and he wasn't hitting all the notes like he used to either. And
yeah,
I went out as a guest artist in case he couldn't do a whole hour and a half
yeah, I was
show.
there. I was there. I saw
Oh
that.
yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
But
Well, you know what? He did that kind of stuff, and
yeah,
the thing about the Reagan movie thing, the high note. There's a point in the song where you go, "Where do I turn then?" It's like it's a real desperate thing
mm,
when you get to the point where you have to let go of the one thing you love the most,
right,
and then you have to go on from here. What do I do?
right,
I'm going, man. It needed that scream.
yeah. You're
Where
right.
do I turn then? It's like it needed to be screamed,
Yeah,
and so I'm glad I hit it.
yeah. It was
It
a,
might have been a God wink.
You're right. It was a scream of desperation, but it didn't sound forced. It didn't sound like you were out of your range. You were so whatever you did. Hats off to you. All these years later, you're still hitting those notes. Well, Brian, it's been great to spend this time with you, and thanks for walking us down memory lane, and thanks for your contribution to the soundtrack. And I hope we'll have a chance to work together again.
Yeah, I look forward to it. I'm always ready to write, and I love the movie. The movie was just spectacular, and because I got to be honest, I've seen a lot of Christian event kind of stuff, and or Hallmark kind of movies, and I was thinking, well, it could be that, but it wasn't. You had real actors, and the storyline was just spectacular. Everything about it was like, wow, I really liked it. I liked it from the get go, and everything was convincing, and it
Mm,
was moving,
mm,
especially the horse thing. Really killed me. Because I'm real close now to having to stop riding my horses. I don't have horses, but whatever
yeah.
that is, you know, whatever I love doing is becomes a real challenge in your old age.
My son and I filmed a skit of doing that same thing, only it's driving a car. And so I'm driving a car, and he says, "Dad, I don't think we should drive. You should drive anymore."
Oh
And
man.
so I said, "Son, one last drive." And so we go off together, and we do one last drive, a little parody of
Really?
the movie. Yeah.
Oh, so you're not, but you didn't quit driving
No,
or
no,
nothing.
no, no. This is a little
Okay.
joke thing we made after the movie came out. But
I had to take my dad's keys when he
yeah,
had Alzheimer's.
that
I
day
had to
will
take the keys, and
that
it
day
was
will come
awful.
for all of us, for the best of us, right?
Yeah,
When
and I'm just going, man. I don't want my kids to take care of me. I just
um,
I wish we
but
could just call it.
but thankfully today there's Uber, so if that time comes, you can always grab an Uber.
Well, you know what? I probably used one anyway because I had two cars until last year, and I had one stolen right out of my driveway, and I've never got it back. And I'm going, okay, well, I'm not buying another car because so I may just do the Uber thing for the airport.
Yeah. Well, Bryan, thanks for stopping by.
It was great having you over, and be careful, be good, and be back.
All
And
right,
the
sounds good.
hypnotist is next.
Okay.